Clara pressed her dead husband's ring to her lips and whispered, "Forgive me, Thomas." Then she stepped off the train into the blizzard, 9 children behind her, and searched for the man who had bought her. The stranger emerged from the snow, tall, scarred, silent. Clara lifted her chin. She would not beg. She would not cry. Whatever cruelty waited, she would endure it for her children. But the man looked at her shivering baby and removed his own coat. "He's cold," Josiah Mercer said, wrapping it around them both. "Let's get you home. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled." "Mama, I can't feel my feet." Mary's small voice cut through the howling wind. Clara pulled her closer, but there was no warmth left to give. "Soon, baby, soon." 9 children. 9 reasons she had sold herself to a stranger. Samuel stood rigid beside her 17 and trying to be a man. Ruth clutched Hannah against her chest. Jacob's eyes burned with hatred he didn't bother hiding. Eliza trembled silently. William pressed against Clara's leg. Daniel slept in Samuel's arms despite the cold. And Benjamin, 18 months old, whimpering against her chest. "Where is he?" Samuel's jaw tightened. "You said he'd be here." "He'll come. And if he doesn't?" Clara had no answer. If Josiah Mercer didn't come, they would freeze on this platform. Simple as that. She had spent their last coins on food for the journey. There was nothing left. No money, no options, no way back. A figure emerged from the white chaos. Clara's heart seized. Tall, broad-shouldered, a scar running down his face that made him look like the kind of man mothers warned their daughters about. He moved through the snow with purpose, limping slightly, eyes fixed on her. This was him, the man who had answered her desperate advertisement, the man who had paid for 9 train tickets without ever seeing her face, the man who now owned her. Clara lifted her chin. Whatever came next, she would face it standing. "Mrs. Whitfield." His voice was deeper than she'd expected. Rougher. "Yes." "Josiah Mercer." He didn't offer his hand. His eyes moved over her children, counting. His expression revealed nothing. Clara waited for the disappointment. 9 children was a burden. 9 children was shameful. Every person who'd heard about her arrangement had looked at her with either pity or disgust. But Mercer just nodded slowly. "Thought there'd be more luggage." "We don't have more." "All right." He was already pulling off his coat, baby shivering. Before Clara could protest, he had wrapped the heavy coat around her shoulders, tucking Benjamin into its warmth. The coat smelled like wood smoke and leather. It was warm from his body. "Sir, you'll freeze." "I've survived worse." He turned to Samuel. "You're the eldest." Samuel stepped forward, protective. "I am." "Josiah Mercer. Call me Joe." He extended his hand. Samuel hesitated, then shook it. "You've been carrying a lot, son. I can see it in your shoulders." "Someone had to." "Not anymore." Joe's voice held no challenge, no dominance, just fact. "That's my job now." Samuel's jaw worked. He wanted to argue. Clara could see it. But something in Joe's steady gaze made him hold his tongue. Joe crouched down to Mary's level. She shrank back, pressing against Clara. "I ain't going to hurt you." His voice dropped lower, softer. "See that big sleigh over there got blankets in it. Hot bricks to warm your feet. You want to get warm." Mary looked up at Clara. "Mama?" "It's all right, sweetheart." Joe straightened. "We need to move. Storm's getting worse. Sleigh's this way." He didn't wait for agreement, didn't ask permission. Just started walking toward a large covered sleigh hitched to 2 massive draft horses. Clara gathered her children and followed. What choice did she have? The sleigh was larger than Clara had expected. Canvas stretched over a wooden frame, creating a sheltered space. Inside, lanterns cast golden light, and blankets were piled high. "Everybody in!" Joe lifted Mary first, setting her gently among the blankets. "Mind the lanterns. Hannah next. Ruth handed over her little sister, and Joe settled Hannah beside Mary, with the same careful attention. One by one, he helped the children into the sleigh. Even sullen Jacob, who tried to climb in himself and nearly slipped on the icy runner. Joe caught his arm without comment and steadied him. "I don't need help," Jacob snapped. "Didn't say you did." Joe released him and moved on. When all the children were settled, Joe turned to Clara. Benjamin had stopped whimpering, soothed by the warmth of Joe's coat. "Ma'am?" Clara's legs wouldn't move. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Weeks of travel, months of fear, years of watching everything she'd built crumble to nothing. "I can manage." "I know you can." Joe didn't touch her, didn't reach for her. Just stood close enough to catch her if she fell. "But you don't have to." Clara stared at him. Snow caught in his dark hair. His face was hard-scarred, weather-beaten. Not handsome, not gentle-looking, but his eyes were steady. "Why are you being kind?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "You paid for us. You could be anything you want." "I could." Joe's voice didn't change. "I'm choosing to be kind. That going to be a problem?" Clara felt tears freeze on her cheeks. "No," she whispered. "No problem." He helped her into the sleigh, his hands strong but careful, and Clara settled beside Ruth with Benjamin in her arms. Joe climbed into the driver's seat. "Everyone settled." A chorus of small voices answered. "Then let's go home." The journey through the storm took forever. Clara dozed fitfully, waking whenever the sleigh lurched or the wind screamed louder. Each time she opened her eyes, she could see Joe's silhouette at the front. Steady, patient, driving through a blizzard that should have stopped any sensible man. "Mama!" Ruth's whisper was barely audible. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone cruel. Someone who'd look at us like we were cattle he'd bought." Ruth's eyes were on Joe's back. "He looked at us like we were people." "That doesn't mean anything. Pa always said you could judge a man by how he treated people who couldn't fight back." Ruth pulled the blanket tighter around Hannah. "We can't fight back. None of us can. And he's still being kind." Clara said nothing. Her daughter's words cut too close to the hope she couldn't afford to feel. Samuel sat near the front of the sleigh, watching Joe with unblinking intensity. "You should sleep," Clara murmured to him. "Someone has to keep watch." "Sam, I won't let anything happen to you." Her firstborn's voice was fierce. "Any of you. If he turns out to be cruel, we'll figure it out. But watch first. Judge later." Samuel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The sleigh pushed on through the white darkness. "We're here." Clara jerked awake. Through a gap in the canvas shapes emerged from the snow, a large house smoke rising from its chimney. A massive barn. Outbuildings, half buried in drifts. Joe appeared at the back of the sleigh. "I'll carry the little ones. You get the others moving." He lifted Mary and Daniel, one on each arm, and they curled against him without hesitation, seeking warmth, seeking safety. Clara roused her other children, and they stumbled through knee-deep snow toward the house. The door flew open before they reached it. A gray-haired woman stood in the firelight, face stern as stone. "Lord have mercy," she said. "Get them inside, now." Heat. Clara hadn't felt real heat in months. The farmhouse in Ohio had been impossible to warm after Thomas died. Their last of their firewood sold for food money. But this house blazed with warmth. A massive fireplace roared at one end. An iron stove radiated heat from the kitchen. And the smell. Stew, fresh bread, something sweet baking. Clara's knees buckled. "Whoa now!" Strong hands caught her. "Joe. Martha, take the baby. She's about to fall." The gray-haired woman, Martha, lifted Benjamin from Clara's arms with practiced efficiency. "Sit her by the fire. Get something hot in her." Clara found herself in a chair, a blanket around her shoulders, a cup of warm cider pressed into her hands. "Drink," Martha ordered. "Slowly. You'll make yourself sick if you gulp." Around her, chaos organized itself. Martha directed the children toward the fire, toward blankets, toward food. Joe moved among them, checking fingers for frostbite, ensuring everyone was warming safely. "This one's feet are bad." Joe was crouched before Mary, her small feet in his large hands. "Martha, warm water. Not hot. Lukewarm first." "I know how to treat frostbite," Martha snapped, but she was already moving. Clara watched as Joe examined each of her children. Gentle. Thorough. His scarred face intent with concentration. "You're going to be fine," he told Mary, wrapping her feet carefully. "Cold feet hurt when they warm up. That's normal. Don't be scared, all right?" Mary nodded, eyes wide. "Can I have more stew?" William asked, his bowl already empty. "Much as you want." Joe straightened. "Martha made plenty." "Why?" Jacob's voice cut through the warmth. "Why'd you make so much food for people you've never met?" Martha turned to face him, hands on hips. "Because it's what decent folks do. Now eat your supper and mind your tongue." "Jacob," Clara's voice held warning. "It's a fair question." Joe moved to stand before Jacob, not looming, but not backing down either. "You want to know why I'm being kind? Why I'm feeding you, warming you, taking you into my house?" "Yeah." Jacob's chin lifted. "I do. Because I know what it's like to have nothing." Joe's voice dropped. "To lose everything. To be so alone and desperate you'd do anything just to survive another day." Something flickered in Jacob's eyes. "Your mother answered my advertisement because she had no choice," Joe continued. "But I answered hers because I wanted to. I've got this big house, this land, this life, and no one to share it with. Your family needed a home. I needed a family. So we're charity." "No. You're hope." Joe held the boy's gaze. "First hope I've had in years." Jacob stared at him for a long moment. His jaw worked. His fists clenched at his sides. Then he turned away and said nothing. The evening wound down slowly. Children were fed until even William stopped asking for more. Blankets were distributed. Hot water was prepared for washing. Clara sat by the fire, Benjamin asleep in her lap, watching her children begin to relax. Ruth was helping Hannah brush her hair. Eliza had found a corner and was quietly observing everything, storing details away. Even Samuel had stopped standing guard and was eating his second bowl of stew. "They're beautiful," Clara startled. Joe had appeared beside her chair, moving quietly for such a large man. "What? Your children?" He sat on a low stool, keeping himself below her eye level. Not threatening, not dominant. "They're beautiful. You must be proud." No one had said that since Thomas died. No one had looked at her 9 children and seen anything but burden. "I am," Clara whispered. "I am proud." "The little one," Joe nodded toward Benjamin. "How old?" 18 months. "He never knew his father." "No." Clara's arms tightened around her baby. "Thomas died 2 weeks after he was born." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know him." "I know what it's like to lose someone." Joe's voice went rough. "Wife and baby, 8 years ago. Fever took them both in 2 days." Clara looked at him. Really looked. Past the scar, past the hard face, past the frontier roughness. She saw grief, old and deep and never quite healed. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You didn't know them." He echoed her words back, and something like a smile flickered across his face. "But that's why I understand. Why I'm not going to ask more from you than you can give. We both know what it's like to love someone and lose them." "I haven't loved you." "I know." Joe met her eyes. "But you might. Someday. And if you don't, that's all right too. I didn't bring you here for love. I brought you here for partnership." Partnership. Clara tasted the word. Foreign. Strange. "My ranch needs a household manager. Someone smart enough to keep things running while I'm out working the land. Joe gestured around him. Martha does her best, but she's one woman. Your children will grow, need education, need direction. This house needs life in it. And what do I get? A home, safety, food for your children, say in how things are run. Joe paused. And time. Time to heal, time to decide what you want. I won't rush you, won't pressure you. If you want our arrangement to stay purely practical forever, that's fine. If someday you want more... He stopped himself. Well, we can talk about that when it comes. Clara stared at him. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A man who'd want to own me, use me, break me. Joe's expression darkened. Someone hurt you before your husband. My father. The words came out flat. He believed women were property. Told me my whole life I was only good for one thing. He was wrong. How do you know you've known me 3 hours? Because I can see it. Joe's eyes held hers. The way your children look at you, the way you carried them across a continent with nothing but will and love. The way you're sitting here right now exhausted and scared and still watching everything, still ready to fight if you need to. He stood. You're not property, Clara. You're a survivor, and survivors deserve kindness. Martha appeared to shepherd the children toward bed. Clara learned that 3 rooms had been prepared. Girls would share one, boys another, and Clara would have the 3rd with Benjamin. More rooms in the spring, Joe said. Once the weather breaks, I'll build more. That's not necessary. It is. His voice left no room for argument. Every child deserves their own space. Might take a while, but I'll get it done. The children moved reluctantly toward bed, exhausted, but overstimulated by the strangeness of everything. Ruth helped with the younger girls. Samuel took charge of the boys. Jacob lingered. Where do you sleep? He demanded of Joe. My room's at the far end of the hall, away from your mother's. That's supposed to make me feel better. It's supposed to tell you the truth. Joe faced the boy squarely. I'm not going to touch your mother unless she wants me to. I'm not going to force myself into her room or her bed. That's her choice, always. And if I don't believe you, then watch. Decide for yourself. Joe didn't flinch. You're old enough to make your own judgments. I'd rather earn your trust than demand it. Jacob stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of doubt. Fine, he muttered and stalked away. Then it was just Clara and Joe. The fire crackled, wind howled outside. Benjamin slept against Clara's chest, warm and peaceful, for the first time in weeks. You should sleep, Joe said. Long day, long journey. I know. Clara didn't move. I just what? I keep waiting for the trap. She looked at him. The moment you show your true self. Every man I've ever known has had a moment like that, when the mask comes off. Joe was quiet for a moment. I don't have a mask, Clara. I'm not a gentle man. I'm not a soft man. I've killed men in the war, and I've done things I'm not proud of to survive. He crouched beside her chair, putting himself at her level. But I've never hurt a woman. Never hurt a child. And I never will. His voice dropped. That's not a mask. That's who I am. And if you never believe anything else I tell you, believe that. Clara searched his face, looking for lies, looking for cracks in the certainty. She found none. All right, she whispered. I'll try to believe you. That's all I ask. Joe stood. Your room's the last door on the left. Extra blankets in the closet. Martha put warm water in the pitcher. He moved toward the hallway, then paused. Clara. Yes. Whatever happens from here, thank you for coming, for bringing your children, for giving me a chance. His voice roughened. This house has been empty for too long, having life in it again. He didn't finish, just nodded once and disappeared down the hall. Clara sat alone in the firelight, her baby in her arms, her children sleeping safely nearby. She had expected a prison. She had expected cruelty. Instead, she had found a scarred man with gentle hands, offering her something she'd never thought she'd have again. Hope. The bedroom was small, but warm. A real bed with thick blankets, a cradle for Benjamin clearly handmade with care. Clara laid her baby down, tucking the blankets around him, watching his chest rise and fall. Then, she sat on the edge of the bed and let herself break. The tears came hard and fast. She cried for Thomas, dead in the cold Ohio ground. She cried for the farm they'd lost, the dreams they'd built, the life they'd planned. She cried for her children, uprooted again, forced to trust a stranger because their mother couldn't provide. And she cried for herself, for the woman who'd written that desperate advertisement, for the girl who'd once believed in happy endings. A soft knock at the door. "Ma'am," Martha's voice. "Brought you something warm to sleep in." Clara scrubbed at her face. "Come in." Martha entered with a worn but clean nightgown over her arm. She set it down, then stood looking at Clara with eyes that saw everything. "You've been crying." "I'm fine." "You ain't fine, and you don't have to be." Martha sat on the edge of the bed. "I came here 5 years ago. Husband dead. Nothing to my name. Mr. Mercer took me in, gave me work, gave me purpose. Why? Because he knows what it's like to have nobody." Martha's voice softened. "He's not easy, Mr. Mercer. Don't talk much. Don't smile much. Has nightmares that shake the walls." Nightmares. The war. The things he saw. The people he lost. Martha stood. "But he's good. Down to his bones he's good. Give him a chance to prove it." She moved to the door. "Your children are strong. Even the angry one." "Especially the angry one," Clara whispered. "Yes." Martha almost smiled. "Especially him. He'll come around. They all will." "How do you know?" "Because they've got a mother who crossed a continent to keep them safe." Martha opened the door. "That kind of love doesn't fail." Then she was gone. Clara sat in the silence. Fire crackling. Wind howling. Baby sleeping peacefully. She had sold herself to a stranger. The stranger had given her kindness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new tests of this fragile arrangement. But tonight, just tonight, her children were warm. Tonight, that was enough. Clara woke in the dark to the sound of screaming. Not her children, not Benjamin, someone else. A man's voice raw with terror. She threw off the blankets and ran toward the sound. "Hit!" Clara found him in the hallway, pressed against the wall, gasping for air like a drowning man. Joe's eyes were open, but seeing something far away. Something terrible. His hands clawed at his chest, and his whole body shook with tremors she could feel from 5 feet away. "No," he choked out. "No, not again. Not them. Please God, not them." "Mr. Mercer." Clara kept her voice low, steady. "Joe." He didn't hear her, lost in whatever nightmare had followed him from sleep. Clara had seen this before. Thomas's brother had come back from the war with the same haunted look, the same night terrors that left him screaming for hours. Most people ran from it. Clara had learned to stay. She moved closer, slowly, carefully. "Joe, you're home. You're safe." His breathing was ragged, desperate. Sweat soaked through his shirt despite the cold. "The smoke," he gasped. "Can't breathe. They're burning. They're all burning." "No one's burning." Clara reached out and touched his arm. Gently. Just enough contact to anchor him. "Feel that?" "That's my hand. You're in your house, in Montana. The war is over." Joe's eyes finally focused. Found her face. Clara. Yes. He looked around, seeming to realize where he was. Shame flooded his features. God, I woke you. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. The children are sleeping. They didn't hear. Clara kept her hand on his arm. Come, sit down. I'll make coffee. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. She guided him toward the kitchen, surprised when he let her. I want to. The fire in the stove had burned low, but embers still glowed. Clara added wood, filled the kettle, moved through the motions while Joe sat at the table with his head in his hands. Does this happen often? She asked quietly. Often enough. His voice was muffled. Martha's learned to sleep through it. I usually go outside, walk it off. Didn't make it that far tonight. The war. He nodded without looking up. Clara poured coffee when it was ready, set a cup before him, and sat across the table. The kitchen was dark, except for the glow from the stove. Intimate. Quiet. My husband's brother had nightmares like yours. Clara wrapped her hands around her own cup. He'd wake up screaming about Gettysburg, about the things he saw there. What happened to him? Drank himself to death. Couldn't live with the memories. Joe finally looked up. His face was haggard, older in the dim light. Sometimes I understand that impulse. But you don't drink. No. He took a long swallow of coffee. Came close those first years, after Sarah and the baby died, after everything fell apart. Had a bottle in my hand more nights than I can count. What stopped you? Spite, mostly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Told myself if I survived the war, just to die drunk in a ditch, the whole thing was pointless. So I kept going. Built this place. Tried to make something worth surviving for. And did you? Joe looked around the dark kitchen. Thought I had. Then I realized I was building it for nobody. Just walls and cattle and empty rooms. His eyes found hers. That's why I answered your advertisement. I was so damn tired of being alone. Clara set down her cup. I should tell you something. All right. When I wrote that advertisement, I was ready to accept anything. Any man, any situation, any cruelty. I'd convinced myself that whatever happened to me didn't matter as long as my children survived. That's a terrible way to think about yourself. It's the truth. Clara's voice didn't waver. I want you to understand what you're dealing with. I'm not some hopeful young bride looking for romance. I'm a woman who sold herself to feed her children. Whatever kindness you show me, I won't know what to do with it. Joe was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll show you anyway, he said finally, and you can learn. They sat in silence as the fire crackled, and the first gray light of dawn began to seep through the windows. The children will be waking soon, Clara said. Yes. What do I tell them about the screaming? Tell them the truth. Joe stood moving stiffly. Tell them I have nightmares from the war, that sometimes they get loud, that it doesn't mean I'm dangerous. Are you... He stopped at the kitchen doorway. Dangerous? Yes. I can be. When I need to be. When someone threatens what's mine. He turned to look at her. But never to you, never to them. That's not the kind of danger you need to fear. Then he was gone, and Clara sat alone with cooling coffee and the weight of everything she was beginning to feel. The first week passed in a blur of adjustment and exhaustion. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch. Joe rose before dawn, worked until dark. Martha ruled the kitchen with iron efficiency. The three ranch hands, an older man named Ezekiel, a young cowboy called Pete, and a quiet half-Cherokee named John Crow, kept their distance from the main house, but tipped their hats respectfully whenever they crossed paths with Clara or the children. The children were adapting each in their own way. Ruth had appointed herself Clara's deputy, helping with the younger ones, learning from Martha how to cook on the massive iron stove. She was good at it, patient and capable, and Martha's stern demeanor softened slightly in her presence. Samuel watched Joe constantly. Not with hostility anymore, but with something closer to study. He'd started following Joe to the barn in the mornings, asking questions about the horses, the cattle, the workings of the ranch. "Your eldest has a good head," Joe told Clara one evening. "Quick learner, asks smart questions. He wants to understand you." "I know. I'm letting him." The younger children were warming to Joe faster than Clara had expected. Mary had stopped flinching when he entered a room. Daniel followed him around whenever allowed, peppering him with questions. Even Hannah shy. Hannah, who barely spoke to strangers, had started sitting near him at meals. William was fearless, of course. Had been since birth. Within 3 days he was begging Joe to teach him to ride. "When the weather breaks," Joe promised. "Spring comes, I'll put you on a horse." "Promise?" "Promise." Eliza remained quiet, observant, writing in a little journal she'd brought from Ohio. Clara caught glimpses of her words sometimes. Detailed descriptions of the ranch, the people, the strange new world they'd landed in. Her daughter was processing through writing the same way Clara processed through work. And Jacob. Jacob remained a storm cloud in human form. He spoke only when necessary, answered questions, with grunts refused to participate in family meals. He spent hours in the boys' room staring out the window at the snow-covered landscape radiating fury that had nowhere to go. "Give him time," Joe said when Clara apologized for her son's behavior. "He's being disrespectful." "He's being 13. Joe shrugged. "I was worse at his age. Took it out on everyone who tried to help after my father died. He'll come around. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't, but I'm not giving up on him." Clara wanted to believe, but she'd seen how deep Jacob's anger ran, how much he blamed her for everything that had happened, how much he hated the man who'd taken his father's place. The confrontation came on the 8th day. Clara was helping Martha with bread when shouting erupted from the barn. She ran outside without thinking, Ruth close behind, and found Jacob facing off against Joe in the snow-covered yard. "You're not my father!" Jacob screamed, fists clenched. "You'll never be my father." Joe stood motionless, arms at his sides. "I know." "Then stop acting like it. Stop telling me what to do. Stop trying to teach me things. Stop looking at my mother like—" Jacob's voice cracked. "Just stop. Jacob." Clara stepped forward. "That's enough." "No." He whirled on her, and she saw tears streaming down his face. "You did this. You brought us here. You gave us to this stranger like we were nothing. Pa trusted you to take care of us, and you just... The slap came before Clara could stop herself. The sound cracked through the cold air like a gunshot. Jacob stared at her hand on his cheek, shock and betrayal flooding his features. "Your father asked me to keep you alive." Clara's voice shook with fury and grief. "He looked at me with his dying breath and said, 'Whatever it takes.' This is whatever it takes, Jacob. This stranger, as you call him, is the only reason you're not starving in a poorhouse right now. The only reason your sisters aren't separated and sent to work in factories. The only reason Benjamin isn't dead of exposure. Mama, I sold myself for you." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "I gave up everything, any chance of a future, any hope of being more than some man's property because I love you. All of you, more than I love myself." She stepped closer and her voice dropped to a whisper. "So you can hate me if you want. You can blame me for the rest of your life. But you will not disrespect the man who took us in when no one else would. You will not throw his kindness back in his face. Do you understand me?" Jacob's face crumpled. The anger drained out of him, leaving only a broken boy who missed his father. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. I just miss him so much." Clara pulled him into her arms, holding him as he sobbed. Over his shoulder, she saw Joe still standing there, face unreadable. He gave her a small nod. Then he turned and walked back into the barn, giving them privacy. That night, after the children were in bed, Clara found Joe on the porch. He sat on a wooden bench, despite the cold, looking out at the moonlit snow. Clara wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside him. "I'm sorry about Jacob." "Don't be. He was cruel to you. He was honest." Joe's breath fogged in the cold air. I'm not his father. I'll never be his father. That's not cruelty, that's truth. But you're trying so hard. I'm trying to be good to him. Joe turned to look at her. That's different from trying to replace what he lost. I don't want to be Thomas. I want to be someone who helps carry the weight of losing Thomas. Clara stared at him. How do you always know the right thing to say? I don't. A ghost of a smile. I just know what it's like to be an angry boy who lost his father too young. The adults who helped me most were the ones who didn't try to fix my grief. They just stood beside me while I felt it. Is that what you're doing with Jacob? Trying to. They sat in silence for a moment. The night was clear stars blazing across the Montana sky. Colder than anything Clara had known in Ohio. I hit him, she said quietly. I've never hit one of my children before. You were protecting me. I was protecting everyone, him included. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. He can't go through life treating kindness like an attack. He'll destroy himself. He won't. He's got too much of you in him. Clara looked at Joe. His profile was sharp, in the moonlight scarred but strong. What do you see when you look at me? She asked. Someone extraordinary. I'm not. You are. Joe turned to face her fully. You crossed a continent with 9 children and nothing but will. You wrote to a stranger offering yourself in exchange for their safety. You walked into my house not knowing if I was a monster, and you've spent every moment since then holding your family together. He reached out and touched her hand. The first time he'd touched her voluntarily since wrapping his coat around her that first day. That's extraordinary, Clara, whether you believe it or not. Clara felt warmth spread through her despite the cold. His hand was rough, calloused, but gentle. I'm starting to believe things, she admitted. That scares me. What things? That you meant what you said. That kindness can be real. That maybe I didn't sell myself into another prison. You didn't. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Joe's fingers tightened around hers. I won't rush you, Clara. I told you that, and I meant it. But I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. However long it takes you to trust me, I'll be here. Clara looked at their joined hands, her work-worn fingers against his scarred knuckles. The children are starting to love you, she said. Even Jacob. Especially Jacob. That's why he's fighting so hard against it. What about their mother? Joe's voice was soft. Is she starting to feel anything? Clara's heart pounded. She should pull away, should deflect, protect herself, maintain distance. Instead, she said, she's trying not to. Why? Because she's afraid. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. The last man she loved is dead. The thought of feeling that again, of risking that kind of loss. I understand. Do you? Better than anyone. Joe released her hand and stood. I loved Sarah with everything I had. When she died, when the baby died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. For years I didn't. Just numbness. Just survival. He looked down at her. Then I read your letter. Something about the way you wrote the desperation and the dignity all mixed together. Something woke up in me that I thought was dead. Clara's breath caught. I'm not asking for your love, Joe said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I want you to know that whatever you're fighting against feeling, I'm feeling it too, and I'm just as scared. He turned and walked into the house. Clara sat alone on the porch blanket wrapped around her, staring at the stars. For the first time since Thomas died, she let herself imagine a future that wasn't just survival. It terrified her. It also felt like hope. 2 weeks passed. The blizzards continued, trapping them all in close quarters. Clara learned to cook on the iron stove. The children learned their lessons from books Joe had collected over the years. Ruth proved to have a talent for mathematics. Eliza devoured every novel in the house. Samuel started helping with the livestock, coming home exhausted and proud. And Jacob began to thaw. It happened slowly. He stopped refusing to eat with the family. He stopped glaring at Joe across the table. One morning, Clara found him in the barn watching Joe repair a harness, asking quiet questions about the technique. "He's coming around," Martha observed, watching through the kitchen window. "He is." Clara couldn't hide her relief. Boy just needed time to grieve, needed to be angry for a while. Mr. Mercer understood that. "Joe understands more than most people." Martha gave her a sharp look. "Joe now, is it?" Heat crept up Clara's neck. "He asked me to call him that." "Mm-hmm." Martha turned back to her work, but Clara caught the hint of a smile. That evening something changed. They were all gathered in the main room after supper. Joe sat by the fire, whittling something small from a piece of wood. The children were scattered around reading or playing or simply resting. Daniel approached Joe with the fearless curiosity of a 5-year-old. "What are you making?" "A horse." Joe held up the partially carved figure. "See, here's the head. Here's the legs. Can I watch?" "Sure." Joe shifted to make room, and Daniel settled beside him, eyes fixed on the emerging shape. Clara watched from across the room, Benjamin drowsing in her arms. There was something painfully domestic about the scene, something that ached in her chest. "He's good with them." Clara turned. Samuel had appeared beside her, voice low enough that only she could hear. "He is. I've been watching him for weeks now." Samuel's jaw tightened, waiting for him to slip, to show what he's really like. And I can't find anything." Her son sounded almost frustrated. "He works harder than any man I've ever seen. He treats everyone fair. He never loses his temper, never raises his voice. He looks at you like—" Samuel stopped. "Like what?" "Like Pa used to, before he got sick. Like you were the most important thing in the room." Clara's throat tightened. "Sam, I'm not saying I want you to marry him. That's your choice. But I'm saying—" Samuel struggled with words. "I'm saying maybe I was wrong. Maybe this isn't the prison I thought it was." "What changed your mind?" "Yesterday, when Will fell through the ice on the pond." Clara's blood chilled. She'd heard about the incident secondhand. William had wandered too far, the ice had cracked, and he'd plunged into freezing water up to his chest. "Joe didn't hesitate," Samuel continued. "Didn't even think about it. Just ran straight in after him. Pulled him out and carried him to the house like he was his own son. I saw his face, Mama. I saw how scared he was." "He was scared?" "Terrified." Samuel's voice cracked slightly. "A man doesn't get that scared for a stranger's child. He gets scared for family." Clara looked back at Joe, still whittling patiently while Daniel chattered beside him. "I think maybe he sees us that way," Samuel said quietly. "Like we're already his." "Would that be so bad?" Samuel was silent for a long moment. Then, "No, I don't think it would." He drifted away to join the others, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts and her sleeping baby. That night, another nightmare woke the house. Clara was there before anyone else, finding Joe in the hallway again, trapped in memories of fire and death. She guided him to the kitchen, made coffee, sat with him, while the terror slowly released its grip. "I'm sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have to." "I want to." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because you've been taking care of us for weeks. Let me take care of you for once." Joe's eyes searched her face, looking for something, maybe finding it. "Clara." "Yes." "I know I said I wouldn't rush you, and I meant it, but I need you to know something." "What?" He reached out and touched her face. Just his fingertips against her cheek. Gentle, questioning. "I'm falling in love with you." Clara's breath stopped. "Not because you're beautiful, though you are. Not because you're here, though that matters. Because of who you are. The strength in you. The fire. The way you love your children so fiercely it makes me ache." "Joe, you don't have to say anything back. You don't have to feel the same way. I just—" His voice broke slightly. "I just needed you to know. Clara covered his hand with hers, pressing it against her cheek. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I. I don't know if I'm ready." "That's all right. But she swallowed hard. "I think maybe I'm falling too. And I don't know what to do with that." Joe leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. Close enough to kiss. Close enough to breathe the same air. "We figure it out together," he murmured. "That's what partnership means." They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, hands intertwined. Then a small voice came from the doorway. "Mama!" They pulled apart. Hannah stood there in her nightgown, rubbing her eyes. "I heard noises. I got scared." Clara opened her arms, and Hannah ran to her, climbing into her lap. "It's all right, sweetheart. Just bad dreams. Mr. Joe has them sometimes." Hannah looked at Joe with solemn eyes. "I have bad dreams too, about Papa." Joe's expression softened. "What do you dream about?" "That I forgot his face. That I can't remember what he looked like anymore." Clara's heart cracked. Joe leaned forward, meeting Hannah's eyes at her level. "Can I tell you something? Something I learned about people we love?" Hannah nodded. "You might forget exactly what he looked like, the shape of his face, the color of his eyes. That happens to everyone. But you won't forget how he made you feel. The safety, the love, the warmth when he held you. That stays forever." Tears slipped down Hannah's cheeks. "Promise. Promise." Joe reached out and gently brushed a tear away. "Your Papa loved you. That love is still inside you. It'll be there your whole life, even when the pictures in your head get fuzzy." Hannah launched herself at him, small arms wrapping around his neck. Joe caught her, held her, looked at Clara over her daughter's head. His eyes were bright with tears he wouldn't let fall. "Thank you," Hannah whispered against his shoulder. "Thank you, Papa Joe." Clara saw the words hit him like a physical blow. Papa Joe. The first time any of her children had called him anything close to a father. His arms tightened around Hannah. "You're welcome, sweetheart," he managed. "You're welcome." Clara sat in the firelit kitchen watching the man she was falling in love with comfort her daughter, and she knew in that moment that whatever happened next, her life would never be the same. The blizzard howling outside couldn't touch them. The fears lurking in her heart couldn't stop what was building. For the first time in years, Clara let herself believe in something beyond survival. She believed in possibility. And that was the most terrifying, most wonderful thing she'd ever felt. Benjamin's fever started 3 days after Hannah called Joe Papa. Clara woke to the baby's weak cries and knew immediately something was wrong. His forehead burned under her palm. His breathing came in short, rattling gasps that made her blood run cold. "No." She pulled him against her chest. "No, no, no." The door burst open. Joe stood there, already dressed for morning chores, face tight with concern. "I heard him from downstairs. What's wrong?" "Fever. High fever." Clara's voice shook. "He's burning up, Joe. He's—" Joe crossed the room in 2 strides and pressed his hand to Benjamin's forehead. His expression went grim. "Martha!" he shouted down the hall. "Get water boiling, all of it, and every clean cloth we have." "What is it?" Ruth appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Mama, what's wrong with Benjamin?" "He's sick, sweetheart. Go help Martha." The next hours blurred into a nightmare of cold compresses and desperate prayers. Benjamin's fever climbed despite everything they tried. His little body burned and shook, and his cries grew weaker as the morning wore on. "We need a doctor." Clara's voice cracked. "Joe, we need Dr. Shaw." "Storm's still raging. Town's 3 hours in good weather, 6 or more in this." "Then go anyway." She grabbed his arm, nails digging in. "Please, I can't lose him. I can't." "Clara." Joe's hands closed over hers. "I'll go. But you need to keep him stable until I get back. Can you do that?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." His eyes held hers, steady and certain. "You've kept 9 children alive through everything life threw at you. You can keep him alive a few more hours." "What if I can't?" You can. He kissed her forehead quick and fierce. I believe in you. Then he was gone, shouting orders to Ezekiel about the horses pulling on his heavy coat, disappearing into the white hell outside. Clara held her baby and prayed. The children gathered in the main room, silent and scared. Even Jacob sat with them, his earlier anger forgotten in the face of real crisis. Ruth took charge of the younger ones, keeping them occupied, keeping them calm. Samuel appeared at Clara's side. What can I do? Keep the water coming. Cold compresses as many as we can manage. And, Clara's voice broke. And pray, Sam. Pray harder than you've ever prayed. I will, Mama. Martha worked alongside Clara, her weathered hands steady, even as her eyes betrayed her fear. I've seen this before, Martha said quietly. Children pull through. They're stronger than they look. Thomas said that about our first baby, the one we lost before Samuel. Clara changed Benjamin's compress with shaking hands. He was wrong then. This one's different. This one's a fighter. Look at him. Clara looked. Benjamin's face was flushed. His breathing labored, but his tiny fists were clenched. Fighting. Even unconscious, even burning with fever, he was fighting. That's your boy, Martha said. He's got your will in him. He's got Thomas's stubbornness. Good. He'll need both. Hours crawled past. The storm raged outside, wind screaming around the house like something alive and angry. Clara lost track of time, lost track of everything except the rhythm of compresses and prayers and desperate hope. Hannah crept close at some point, her small face streaked with tears. Is Benjamin going to heaven like Papa? Clara's heart shattered. Not if I can help it, sweetheart. I'll pray extra hard. Maybe God will listen to me because I'm little. Papa said God listens to little children. Then pray, Hannah. Pray as hard as you can. Hannah closed her eyes and clasped her hands together, lips moving in silent, fervent prayer. Clara watched her daughter and felt something crack open inside her. All her children gathered around her, scared and helpless, but refusing to give up. This was what family meant. This was what love looked like. She wouldn't let them down. Late afternoon, Benjamin's fever spiked. His breathing turned shallow, barely visible. Clara felt panic claw at her throat. He's getting worse. She turned to Martha wild-eyed. Why is he getting worse? We've been doing everything right. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And sometimes it just gets worse. Clara pulled Benjamin closer, rocking him, tears streaming down her face. I can't lose another one. I can't. Thomas, our first baby, my mother. I can't lose anyone else. Then don't. Martha gripped her shoulders. Don't give up. Don't let go. That boy can feel you holding on. He knows you're fighting for him. What if it's not enough? It will be. Martha's voice was fierce. It has to be. A commotion at the door made them both turn. Joe burst in, covered in snow, half frozen, with another man behind him. Dr. Henry Shaw, silver-haired and grim-faced, carrying a black medical bag. Where's the baby? Shaw demanded. Here. Clara held Benjamin out with trembling hands. Please, help him. Shaw took one look and went to work. His hands moved with practiced precision, checking pulse, examining eyes, listening to the rattling breath. Lung fever, he said shortly. Common in infants this time of year. Dangerous but treatable if we act fast. Can you save him? Shaw looked at her. I can try. That's all any of us can do. The next hours were a blur of medicine and steam and constant vigilance. Shaw mixed compounds from his bag, administered doses through a dropper, showed Clara how to hold Benjamin upright to ease his breathing. Joe stayed close, hauling water, stoking the fire, doing whatever Shaw ordered without question. His face was gray with exhaustion. The ride through the blizzard had nearly killed him, but he refused to rest. Not until the baby's out of danger, he said when Clara tried to make him sit. Not until I know he's going to be all right. Joe, you'll collapse. Then I'll collapse, but I'll do it after. Midnight came and went. The storm finally began to ease, wind dying down to whispers. Shaw stayed by Benjamin's side, adjusting treatments, monitoring every small change. Clara sat in the rocking chair, Benjamin in her arms, refusing to let go. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but she wouldn't close them, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't miss a single moment. "You need rest," Shaw said quietly. "I need my son to live. He's fighting. His body is fighting the infection. That's good." "Is it enough?" Shaw was quiet for a moment. "I've seen children pull through worse. And I've seen healthy children slip away without warning. Medicine isn't magic, Mrs. Whitfield. It's skill and hope and a whole lot of prayer. I've been praying." "Then keep praying." Near dawn, something changed. Benjamin's breathing eased. His fever dropped just slightly, but enough to notice. His tiny fists unclenched, and he slept peacefully for the first time in nearly 2 days. Shaw checked him again, and relief broke across his weathered face. "The fever's breaking. He's going to make it." Clara heard the words but couldn't process them, couldn't believe them. "He's going to live. He's going to live." Shaw clasped her shoulder. "Your boy is strong. He gets that from his mother." The tears came then, great racking sobs that Clara couldn't control and didn't try to. She held Benjamin against her chest and cried with relief and exhaustion and the release of terror she'd been carrying for days. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Joe, holding her while she fell apart, supporting her weight when her own strength failed. "It's all right," he murmured against her hair. "It's all right, Clara. He's safe. You saved him." "We saved him. You brought the doctor. You kept him alive until I got back. That was all you." The children crept in one by one, drawn by the change in atmosphere. Ruth came first, then Samuel, then the younger ones, until all 9 of them were gathered around Clara and Benjamin. "Is he okay?" Mary asked, her voice tiny with hope. "He's okay." Clara managed a smile through her tears. "He's going to be okay." Hannah threw her arms around Clara's legs. "I told you God listens to little children." Clara laughed. It came out broken and raw, but it was laughter. "You were right, sweetheart. You were absolutely right." Shaw left later that morning after giving Clara detailed instructions for Benjamin's continued care. Joe walked him out, and Clara could hear their voices on the porch. "She's remarkable," Shaw said. "I've seen parents fall apart completely in situations like this. She held that family together through sheer will." "She's the strongest person I've ever met," Joe replied. "You rode through a blizzard that should have killed you. Wasn't about to let her face this alone." Shaw was quiet for a moment. Then, "You love her." "I do." "Does she know?" "She knows. Whether she feels the same way, that's her choice to make." Clara turned away from the window, heart pounding. He loved her. He'd said it before in the kitchen during one of his nightmares. But hearing him say it to someone else without knowing she was listening, that made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The question was, what did she feel? She looked at Benjamin, sleeping peacefully in her arms. At her other children scattered through the house, finally relaxing after days of fear. At this home that had taken them in this life that was slowly becoming theirs. And at the man who had made it all possible. Joe came back inside, stomping snow off his boots. He looked exhausted, running on nothing but stubbornness. "You need to sleep," Clara said. "I know. Now, Joe, the crisis is over. Benjamin is stable. The doctor said a lot of things." Joe rubbed his face. "But you're right. I'm no good to anyone dead on my feet." He moved toward the hallway, then stopped. "Clara." "Yes?" "I heard what the doctor said. About you being remarkable." Joe's eyes met hers. "I just wanted you to know that I meant what I said back. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm grateful every day that you're here." Clara's throat tightened. "Joe, you don't have to say anything. I know you're tired. I know you've got more important things to worry about than an old rancher's feelings." You're not old. A tired smile crossed his face. Old enough to know better. Young enough not to care. He turned away. Get some rest, Clara. All of you. But Clara found she couldn't rest. Not yet. She settled Benjamin in his cradle, made sure the other children were cared for, and then she did something she hadn't done since Thomas died. She went looking for Joe. She found him in his room at the end of the hall. The door was open, and he sat on the edge of his bed, still fully dressed, head in his hands. Joe. He looked up, startled. Clara, is something wrong? Is Benjamin? Benjamin is fine. She stepped into the room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. I came to talk to you. About what? Clara took a breath. About what you said to Dr. Shaw. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You heard that. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was by the window. Your voice is carried. I see. Joe's expression was carefully neutral. And I've been thinking. Clara moved closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. About what you said. About what you feel. Clara, you don't have to. Let me finish. Her voice came out sharper than intended. Please. Joe went quiet. When Thomas died, I thought I would never feel anything again. Not love, not hope, not anything except the need to survive. I told myself that was enough, that keeping my children alive was all that mattered, that my own heart was just something to lock away and forget. She looked at him, this scarred man who had ridden through a blizzard to save her baby. You've made that very hard. I'm sorry. Don't be. Clara took another step forward. Don't ever be sorry for being kind, for showing me that there's more to life than just surviving, for making me feel things I thought I'd never feel again. Joe stood slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying. Clara's voice shook. I'm saying that I think maybe I love you too. And that terrifies me more than anything Maddox could ever do. Joe went very still. Maddox. Clara blinked. What? You said Maddox. Who's Maddox? Ice flooded Clara's veins. She'd said the name without thinking, the name she'd been trying not to think about for weeks. He's no one. Clara. Joe's voice dropped. Who is Maddox? She couldn't meet his eyes. He's the man who holds the mortgage on our farm in Ohio. The man my father sold me to before I could escape. The man who... Her voice broke. The man who's probably looking for me right now. Joe's expression hardened into something she hadn't seen before, something dangerous. You said you were a widow, that you came here because your husband died. That's true. All of it's true. Clara's words tumbled over each other. Thomas died. The farm failed, we lost everything. But before I could get on the train, Cornelius Maddox came to collect on debts my father had promised. Debts he'd used me as collateral for without my knowledge. Your father sold you? Yes. And this Maddox. He's rich, powerful. He has connections everywhere. Clara finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I ran Joe. I took my children and ran in the middle of the night because it was the only way to escape him. I didn't think he'd follow me all the way to Montana, but if he does, he'll have to go through me. Clara stared at him. Joe's face had transformed. The gentle rancher was gone, replaced by something harder, fiercer, more dangerous. You don't understand. Maddox has money, influence. He could make trouble for you for the ranch. Let him try. Joe, listen to me. He gripped her shoulders, not hard but firm. I lost my wife and child because I couldn't protect them. I spent 8 years living with that failure. I will not let another woman I love be taken from me. Not by disease, not by circumstance, and sure as hell not by some rich bastard who thinks he can buy people. You barely know me. I know enough. His eyes blazed. I know you crossed a continent to save your children. I know you sat up for 2 days straight keeping your baby alive. I know you've got more courage in your little finger than most men have in their whole bodies. He pulled her closer. I know I love you, and I know I'll fight for you, whatever comes. Clara broke. She fell against his chest and sobbed, really sobbed for the first time since this whole nightmare began. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the desperate hope she'd been carrying, it poured out of her in great heaving waves, and Joe held her through every moment. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you, Clara. You're not alone anymore. I'm scared. I know. What if he finds us? Then we face him together. Joe tilted her chin up, making her look at him. You, me, the children, we're a family now. That means we fight together. You'd do that, risk everything for us. Already have. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Rode through a blizzard, didn't I? Clara laughed, watery and broken. You did. Wasn't about to let that baby die. Wasn't about to let you face that alone. He wiped tears from her cheeks with his thumb. That's what family does, Clara. That's what love does. She looked up at him, this man who had been a stranger 6 weeks ago and was now the center of her world. I love you, she said. I'm still scared, and I don't know what's coming, but I love you. Joe's face softened. That's enough. That's everything. He kissed her then, gentle at first, questioning, then deeper, fiercer, as she responded in kind. All the fear and longing and hope between them poured into that kiss. When they finally broke apart breathless, the world had shifted. What now? Clara asked. Now we rest. All of us. Joe tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Tomorrow, we start preparing. If this Maddox is coming, we'll be ready. How can you be so calm? I'm not calm. I'm terrified. Joe's eyes held hers. But I've learned something about fear, Clara. It only wins if you let it. And I'm done letting fear run my life. He took her hand. Come on. Your children need you. And you need sleep. They walked out of his room together, hand in hand, facing whatever came next. The storm outside had passed. But Clara knew another storm was coming. And this time, she wouldn't face it alone. Maddox came 3 weeks later. Clara was in the kitchen with Martha when she heard the horses. Not the familiar sounds of Joe and his men returning from the fields, but something different. Heavier, more deliberate. She looked out the window and her blood turned to ice. 6 riders, black coats against the white snow, and at their head, a man she would have recognized anywhere. Cornelius Maddox, silver-haired and cold-eyed, sitting his horse like he owned the world. Martha, Clara's voice came out strangled. Get the children. Hide them. Now. What? Now. Martha moved without further question, her face grim. Clara heard her gathering the children, herding them toward the back of the house, toward the root cellar that Joe had shown her during those first days. Clara stayed at the window. She watched Maddox dismount, watched his men fan out around the property, watched him brush snow from his expensive coat, and look at the house like a man surveying something he already owned. The door burst open behind her. Joe stood there, rifle in hand, face hard as stone. Behind him, Ezekiel and John Crow and Pete, all armed, all ready. Get away from the window, Joe ordered. Clara didn't move. He found me. I know. Get away from the window, Clara. She turned then, and Joe saw the terror on her face. Something in his expression shifted, softened, despite the danger. I won't let him take you. He has 6 men, probably more coming. I have 3, and I have something worth fighting for. Joe moved to stand beside her, rifle held ready. You hear me, Clara? This ends here, today. A knock at the door. Polite, almost gentle. Mrs. Whitfield. Maddox's voice carried through the wood. I know you're in there. I've come a long way to find you. Won't you invite me in? Joe started toward the door, but Clara grabbed his arm. Let me. Like hell. He wants me, Joe. If I face him directly, it might buy us time. Clara's grip tightened. Trust me. Joe's jaw worked. Every instinct in him was screaming to put himself between Clara and danger. She could see it in his eyes, the war between protecting her and respecting her choice. "I'll be right beside you," he said finally. "I know." Clara walked to the door. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady when she opened it. "Mr. Maddox." Cornelius Maddox smiled. It was the smile she remembered, warm on the surface, dead underneath. "Clara, you've led me on quite a chase." His eyes moved past her to Joe. "And you must be the man who's been harboring my property." "Your property?" Joe's voice was dangerous. "Didn't she tell you Clara's father owed me a significant debt? She was offered as collateral. When she failed to honor that agreement and fled in the night..." Maddox spread his hands. "Well, I've simply come to collect what's mine." "I'm not property." Clara's voice rang clear. "Not my father's to sell, and not yours to collect. The law would disagree." "The law is 3 hours away in Silver Falls," Joe said flatly. "And I don't see any lawmen among your hired guns." Maddox's smile flickered. "I prefer to handle business matters privately. Less complicated." "Here's what's going to happen." Joe stepped forward, putting himself between Maddox and Clara. "You're going to get back on your horse. You're going to ride back to wherever you came from, and you're going to forget Clara Whitfield ever existed." "Or what?" "Or I'll make you forget." Maddox laughed. A cold, empty sound. "Brave words for a man outnumbered 2-1. My men are professionals, Mr. Mercer, Josiah Mercer. And your professionals are looking at 3 men who don't have anywhere else to be. 3 men who will fight to the death for what's theirs." How touching. Maddox's eyes found Clara again. "Is that what you want, Clara? Men dying for you? Is that what your precious children should see their mother starting a war over debts she owes?" Clara's stomach twisted. The children. Oh God, the children were in the root cellar listening to all of this, hearing their mother talked about like livestock. "I don't owe you anything. Your father is dead." Clara stepped around Joe despite his protest. "My father died drunk in a ditch 6 months ago. Whatever debts he made, whatever promises he broke, they died with him. You have no claim on me." Something flickered in Maddox's eyes. She'd surprised him. "That's unfortunate, but legally..." "Legally, you can't enforce a debt made by a dead man against his adult daughter in another territory." Clara drew on every bit of education she'd ever received. "I looked it up, Mr. Maddox, before I left Ohio. Montana doesn't recognize debt bondage. It doesn't allow women to be used as collateral. Whatever contract my father made with you, it's worthless here." Maddox's smile vanished completely. "You've done your research. I've done what I had to do to protect my children." "Ah, yes, the children." Maddox looked past her into the house. 9 of them, isn't there? That's quite a burden, quite a lot of mouths to feed." "They're not your concern." "But they are, Clara. They're very much my concern." His voice dropped lower. "You see, I didn't come all this way just for you. I came because I don't like being cheated. I don't like being made to look foolish. When a woman I had plans for disappears in the night, people talk. They wonder if perhaps Cornelius Maddox isn't as powerful as he seems." He stepped closer. Joe's rifle came up instantly. "I could make things very difficult for you, Clara. For your new husband. For your children." Maddox's eyes glittered. "Or we could come to an arrangement. A new arrangement. One that benefits everyone." "What kind of arrangement?" "Clara, don't," Joe started. "Let him talk." Clara didn't take her eyes off Maddox. "What do you want?" "I want what I've always wanted. A wife, a hostess. Someone beautiful and educated to run my household." Maddox smiled again. "Come back to Ohio with me, Clara. Leave this frontier wilderness. Leave this rancher, leave all of it behind. I'll provide for your children. Give them education opportunity. And what happens to me? You become Mrs. Cornelius Maddox. You live in comfort and security for the rest of your life. As your property. As my wife. There's a difference. Clara stared at him. This man who had haunted her nightmares for months. This man who had driven her across a continent in desperate flight. This man who stood here now offering her everything and nothing. No. Maddox blinked. I beg your pardon. No. Clara's voice grew stronger. I won't go with you. I won't be your wife, your hostess, your property. I have a home here. I have a family. I have a man who loves me and treats me as an equal. You can't offer me anything worth giving that up. You're making a mistake. No. I made mistakes before. Trusting my father. Running instead of fighting. Being so scared of men like you that I forgot what I was worth. Clara stepped forward, and for the first time, Maddox actually stepped back. I'm not scared anymore. You should be. Why? What are you going to do? Drag me away at gunpoint in front of my children. Murder a rancher and his men over a debt that doesn't legally exist. Clara shook her head. You're a businessman, Mr. Maddox. Calculate the cost. Calculate the risk. Is one woman really worth destroying your reputation? Maddox's face twisted with something ugly, the mask slipping. You think you're clever. You think you've outmaneuvered me. I think I've finally stopped running. For a long moment, nobody moved. Maddox's men shifted uneasily on their horses. Joe and his men held their positions ready for violence. Then Maddox laughed, but this time there was no warmth even pretended, just cold, bitter fury. Very well, Clara, you've made your choice, but don't think this is over. He stepped back toward his horse. I'll be back. With lawyers, with sheriffs, with whatever it takes. This isn't the end. Yes, Clara said quietly. It is. Maddox mounted his horse and looked down at her one last time. You'll regret this. I already regret the months I spent being afraid of you. Clara lifted her chin. That's the only regret I have. Maddox's eyes blazed with hatred. Then he wheeled his horse and rode away, his men following behind him. Clara watched them disappear over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. Joe caught her before she hit the ground, gathering her against his chest as great shaking sobs racked her body. You did it. His voice was rough with emotion. Clara, you faced him down. You won. Did I? He said he'd be back. Let him try. Joe's arms tightened around her. Let him bring his lawyers and his sheriffs. We'll fight them all. I'm so tired of fighting. I know. He pressed his lips to her hair. I know, sweetheart. But this fight, this one, was worth it. You stood up for yourself. You told him no. That took more courage than anything I've ever seen. Clara looked up at him through her tears. You would have shot him. I saw it in your eyes. Without hesitation. That scares me. It should. Joe's face was serious. I'm not a gentle man, Clara. I told you that. But the violence in me, the part that would kill to protect what's mine, that's not something you have to fear. That's something that protects you. I don't want anyone dying for me. Then let's hope it doesn't come to that. The children emerged from the root cellar, Ruth leading them, Samuel bringing up the rear. Their faces were pale, frightened, but when they saw Clara in Joe's arms, relief broke across their features. Mama! Mary ran to her, throwing small arms around Clara's waist. We heard shouting. We were so scared. It's all right, sweetheart. The bad man is gone. Is he coming back? Jacob's voice was sharp with fear and anger. Clara hesitated. She wouldn't lie to her children. He might try. Then we'll stop him. Jacob's jaw set in a way that reminded Clara painfully of Thomas. We'll stop him together. That's right. Joe crouched to Jacob's level. Together. That's how families fight. Jacob stared at him for a long moment. Something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Acceptance. Okay, Jacob said quietly. Okay, Papa Joe. Clara's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. Papa Joe. From Jacob, who had fought so hard against accepting this new life. Let's get inside. Martha said, her voice gruff to hide her emotion. I've got soup on, and these children need feeding. Life resumed, but different now. Sharper, more precious. Joe sent word to the neighboring ranches explaining the situation. Within days, riders started appearing, other ranchers, townspeople, men and women who'd heard about Maddox and wanted to offer support. "Frontier folk take care of their own," Ezekiel explained to Clara. "Man like Maddox coming in here trying to take one of ours that don't sit well with nobody." The sheriff from Silver Falls rode out personally, a stern man named Tom Garrett, who listened to Clara's story with growing anger. "Debt bondage," he spat. "That went out with slavery. Don't care what contracts that bastard has, they ain't enforceable here. He said he'd bring lawyers. Let him. I've got a judge in Billings who'd love nothing better than to throw an Eastern money man out of his courtroom." Garrett touched his hat. "You've got my word, Mrs. Mercer. That man won't touch you." Mrs. Mercer. Clara's heart stuttered. They weren't actually married, not legally, but the sheriff had assumed, and she hadn't corrected him. Joe found her later that evening sitting by the fire with Benjamin in her arms. "You're thinking." "I'm always thinking." "You're thinking about what the sheriff called you." Joe sat beside her. "Mrs. Mercer." Clara's cheeks heated. "He assumed. Did you want to correct him?" She looked at Benjamin sleeping peacefully. "I didn't." "Good." Joe's voice was soft. "Because I've been thinking too, about making it official." Clara's breath caught. "Joe, I know you came here as a mail-order bride. I know our arrangement was supposed to be practical, businesslike. But Clara..." He took her hand. "Nothing about what I feel for you is practical. Nothing about this is businesslike. I love you. I love your children. I want you to be my wife, really my wife. We barely know each other. I know everything that matters." Joe's eyes held hers. "I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you love your children more than life. I know you've started to love me too. What if Maddox comes back? What if he brings trouble? Then we face it together, as husband and wife." Joe squeezed her hand. "I'm not asking you to forget Thomas. He was your first love, the father of your children. He'll always have a place in your heart. But there's room for me too, Clara. I know there is." Clara looked at this man who had taken her in as a stranger and made her part of his world, who had ridden through a blizzard to save her baby, who had stood beside her against the monster from her past. "Yes," she whispered. Joe's face transformed. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you. Really marry you. In the church with the children there, with everyone watching." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I want to be your wife, Josiah Mercer. I want to build a life with you." He kissed her, then gentle and fierce at once, and Clara felt something she'd thought she'd never feel again. Home. Not a place. Not a building. A person. The wedding was planned for spring when the snow melted and travel became possible. But Clara didn't want to wait for everything. That night, after the children were asleep, she went to Joe's room. He was sitting by the window when she knocked. His face showed surprise when he opened the door. "Clara, is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She stepped inside before she could lose her nerve. "I want to stay, tonight, with you." Joe went very still. "Clara, we don't have to." "I know we don't have to. I want to." She met his eyes. "I'm tired of waiting for life to happen. Tired of being careful and scared and practical. I love you. I want to be with you. The wedding can wait for spring, but I can't." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Joe reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "If you change your mind any time, any moment, you tell me. We stop. No questions." "I know." She covered his hands with hers. "That's why I'm sure." He kissed her softly, then deeper, and Clara let herself fall into the sensation. No fear, no hesitation, just love and trust and the promise of something beautiful. Later, lying in his arms, Clara listened to his heartbeat and felt peace settle over her like a blanket. "Thank you," she whispered. For what? For being patient. For waiting until I was ready. For never pushing. You're worth waiting for. Joe pressed a kiss to her hair. You'll always be worth waiting for. I love you. I love you too. His arms tightened around her. Get some sleep, Clara. Tomorrow's a new day. She closed her eyes, safe and warm and loved. For the first time since Thomas died, she didn't dream of loss. She dreamed of future. Spring came slowly to Montana, winter releasing its grip reluctantly. But when it came in glory. Snow melted into rushing streams. Grass pushed through the mud. The world came alive again after months of frozen stillness. And Clara Whitfield became Clara Mercer. The wedding took place in the little church in Silver Falls. Not grand, not fancy. Just a simple ceremony witnessed by everyone who'd helped them through the winter. Samuel walked Clara down the aisle, standing tall and proud. Ruth held Benjamin, who had grown strong and healthy. All the children sat in the front pew. Jacob, Eliza, William, Mary, Daniel, and Hannah, watching their mother marry the man who'd become their father. Reverend Isaiah Cooper performed the ceremony, his words simple and sincere. Marriage isn't just about two people, he said. It's about the family they create, the life they build, the love they share. He looked at Clara and Joe. You two have already built that family, already created that life. Today you're just making it official. When Joe slipped the ring on Clara's finger, his hands were steady, but his eyes were bright with tears he refused to let fall. I take you as my wife, he said quietly. From this day forward, in sickness and health, in good times and bad, until death parts us. Clara's voice shook as she replied, I take you as my husband, as the father of my children, as my partner in everything that comes. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Cooper smiled. You may kiss your bride. Joe kissed her, and the church erupted in cheers. The reception was held at the ranch neighbors, bringing food and music and celebration. Clara danced with Joe, then with Samuel, then with each of her children in turn. Even Jacob danced awkwardly but willingly, his earlier anger completely gone. I was wrong about him, he said during their dance. About Papa Joe. I'm sorry, Mama. You were protecting us. That's nothing to apologize for. I should have trusted you. You trust me now. That's what matters. As evening fell and guests departed, Clara stood on the porch with her husband, watching the sun set over the mountains. Mrs. Mercer, Joe's voice held wonder and warmth. How does it feel? Like something I never thought I'd have again. Clara leaned against him. Like home. He wrapped his arm around her. This is just the beginning, you know. We've got a whole life ahead of us. I know. Clara smiled. I can't wait to live it. Behind them in the house that had become their home, 9 children laughed and played and lived. A family forged through hardship. A love born from kindness. A future brighter than either of them had dared to dream. Summer brought warmth and growth to the ranch, but it also brought the news Clara had been dreading. Joe came back from town with a letter clutched in his hand and a grim set to his jaw. What is it? Clara asked, wiping flour from her hands. Maddox. He filed a lawsuit in Billings. Claims breach of contract theft of property. Joe's voice was flat. He's demanding you be returned to Ohio to face charges. Clara's stomach dropped. Can he do that? He can try. Joe set the letter on the table. Sheriff Garrett says the judge wants us in Billings next month. Both of us. And if we lose, we won't lose. Joe, we won't lose Clara. He pulled her into his arms. I've already sent word to a lawyer in Billings, man named Harrison Wells. Garrett says he's the best in the territory. He'll fight for us. Clara pressed her face against his chest. I thought it was over. I thought when Maddox left, men like him don't give up easy. They've got too much pride. Joe's arms tightened. But neither do we. The month before the trial passed in anxious preparation. Harrison Wells came to the ranch, twice a sharp-eyed man with gray streaks in his hair and a mind like a steel trap. He took Clara's statement, examined the documents Maddox had filed, and shook his head slowly. His case is weak. Debt bondage hasn't been enforceable since before the war, and even then, it was questionable. He's banking on intimidation, on wearing you down with legal costs and delays. Will it work? Clara asked. Not if I have anything to say about it. Wells smiled grimly. I've been waiting for a case like this. A chance to put Eastern moneymen in their place. No offense, ma'am. None taken. The children knew something was wrong, even though Clara and Joe tried to shield them from the worst of it. Ruth found Clara crying in the kitchen one night and sat beside her without speaking, simply holding her mother's hand. It's going to be all right, Ruth said finally. Papa Joe won't let anything happen to you. I know, sweetheart. Then why are you crying? Clara wiped her eyes. Because I'm tired. Tired of running. Tired of fighting. Tired of being afraid. You told me fear isn't a good enough reason to give up. Ruth squeezed her hand. You told Jacob that. You told all of us. I did. Then believe it yourself. Ruth's voice was firm, older than her 15 years. We've come too far to lose now. We've built too much. Clara looked at her eldest daughter, this girl who had grown into a young woman over the past months, who had helped hold the family together through grief and upheaval and uncertainty. When did you get so wise? I learned from my mother. The trial took place in early August. Clara and Joe traveled to Billings with Samuel and Ruth, leaving the younger children in Martha's capable care. The journey took 2 days, and Clara spent most of it sick with anxiety. Whatever happens, Joe said the night before they reached the city, we face it together. You hear me? I hear you. This isn't Ohio. This isn't your father's world. Here, you've got people who believe in you, who'll fight for you. He cupped her face in his hands. Including me. Especially me. I love you. I love you too. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. The courtroom was smaller than Clara had expected. Not the grand chambers she'd imagined, but a practical room with wooden benches and simple furnishings. Judge Marcus Wheeler sat at the front, a stern-faced man who looked like he'd seen every kind of trouble the frontier could produce. Maddox was there, of course, dressed impeccably, surrounded by lawyers, looking at Clara with that cold, possessive stare that still made her skin crawl. But she didn't look away. Not this time. Harrison Wells presented their case first. He was methodical, thorough, citing laws and precedents that Clara barely understood, but that made the judge nod thoughtfully. The so-called contract Mr. Maddox presents was made without my client's knowledge or consent, Wells argued. It was drafted by her father, a man she had no legal obligation to honor. Furthermore, debt bondage has been explicitly prohibited in Montana Territory since 1864. Mr. Maddox's claim is not only legally invalid, it's morally repugnant. Maddox's lawyer countered with arguments about property rights and contractual obligations, but even Clara could see the judge wasn't convinced. Then came the testimonies. Clara took the stand and told her story, all of it. Her father's cruelty, the contract she'd never signed, the night she'd fled with her children, the fear she'd lived with for months. He wanted to own me, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Not marry me, own me. Like livestock, like property. I am not property, Your Honor. I am a woman, a mother, a wife. I have value beyond what can be bought and sold. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Then Joe took the stand. He spoke simply without flourish. About finding Clara's advertisement. About sending passage money. About the night she'd arrived with 9 children in the middle of a blizzard. She didn't come to me as property, he said. She came as a partner. That's what I offered her, and that's what she accepted. A partnership. A marriage of equals. And you love her? Wells asked. More than I've ever loved anything. Joe's eyes found Clara's across the courtroom. More than my own life. Maddox took the stand last. He was smooth-polished confident. He spoke about debts and obligations and the importance of honoring commitments. He painted Clara as a thief who had stolen from him and fled. But when Judge Wheeler asked him directly, "Did Mrs. Mercer ever sign any contract with you personally?" Maddox hesitated. "Her father. I asked about Mrs. Mercer. Did she sign anything?" "No, Your Honor. But the understanding was—" "The understanding." Wheeler's voice was ice. "The understanding was that you could acquire a woman against her will because her father owed you money. Is that correct?" "The law in Ohio—" "This isn't Ohio, Mr. Maddox. This is Montana territory, and in Montana, we don't traffic in human beings." Wheeler leaned forward. "Your case is dismissed. With prejudice. You will not refile this claim in any territorial court under my jurisdiction. Furthermore, I'm recommending to the U.S. Marshal that you be investigated for attempted trafficking." Maddox's face went white. "Your Honor." "We're done here." Wheeler banged his gavel. "Court is adjourned." Clara sat frozen in her seat, unable to believe what had just happened. It was over. It was really over. Joe was beside her in an instant, pulling her to her feet, holding her as she finally let herself break down. "You won," he murmured. "Clara, you won. We won." She pulled back to look at his face. "We did it together." Samuel and Ruth joined them, and for a long moment they simply stood there, four people who had become a family, holding each other in the aftermath of victory. Maddox swept past them on his way out. He didn't speak, didn't even look at them. But Clara saw his face, and for the first time she felt something she hadn't expected. Pity. Because Cornelius Maddox, for all his money and power, had nothing. No family, no love, no home. Just ambition and greed and an empty life spent trying to own things that could never truly belong to him. Clara had everything that mattered, and he had nothing at all. The journey home felt different, lighter. Ruth laughed more than Clara had heard in months. Samuel actually smiled, talking about the ranch, about the future, about plans he was making. Even the landscape seemed brighter, the mountains more majestic, the sky more blue. "What are you thinking?" Joe asked as they crested the final ridge and the ranch came into view. "That I never want to leave again." Clara leaned against him. "That this is where I belong. This will always be your home, Clara, no matter what." When they pulled into the yard, the children came pouring out of the house. Martha had clearly told them the news because they were cheering and crying and climbing all over Joe and Clara before they could even dismount. "You won," William shouted. "You beat the bad man." "We did, sweetheart." Clara gathered as many of them as she could into her arms. "We're safe now, all of us." Jacob stood back from the crowd watching. When Clara met his eyes, he nodded once. "Welcome home, Mama." "Thank you, Jacob." He moved forward, then joining the embrace, letting himself be part of the family he'd fought so hard against accepting. That night, after the children were in bed, Clara and Joe sat on the porch together. The stars blazed overhead, countless points of light in the vast Montana sky. "I have something to tell you," Clara said quietly. "What is it?" She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I think we're going to need that extra room you promised." Joe went very still. "Clara, are you?" "I think so. I'm not certain yet, but the signs are there." "A baby." His voice was hoarse with emotion. "Our baby." "Yes." He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I never thought I'd have this again," he whispered. "After Sarah, after everything, I thought that part of my life was over." "So did I." Clara pressed her face against his chest. "But here we are. Here we are." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright with tears. "I love you, Clara Mercer. I love our children. I love this life we're building. I love you too." He kissed her softly, then deeper, and Clara felt the future stretching out before them. Not perfect, Not without challenges, but full of promise, full of love. Winter came again, but this time Clara faced it without fear. The house was warm, the pantry full, the children healthy and happy. Samuel had become Joe's right hand on the ranch. Ruth was preparing to attend the new school in Silver Falls. Jacob had found his place working with the horses, discovering a talent he'd never known he had. The younger ones thrived in ways Clara had barely dared to hope. William learned to ride just as Joe had promised. Mary lost her fear of strangers. Daniel made friends with children from neighboring ranches. Hannah learned to read devouring books with the same hunger Eliza had always shown. And Benjamin the baby, who had almost died that first terrible winter, was now a healthy, laughing toddler who followed Joe everywhere. "Papa," he would shout whenever Joe came through the door. "Papa, Papa." It never failed to make Joe smile. Clara's belly grew round as winter deepened. Dr. Shaw came out monthly to check on her, pronouncing everything healthy and normal. "Strong woman," he told Joe. "Strong baby. Nothing to worry about." But Joe worried anyway. Clara caught him watching her, sometimes fear flickering in his eyes. "I'm not going to die," she told him one night, reading his thoughts. "I know." "Then stop looking at me like you're afraid I'll disappear." "I can't help it." His voice was rough. "I lost Sarah in childbirth. Lost the baby too. Every time I look at you, every time I see your belly growing, I remember." Clara took his face in her hands. "I'm not Sarah. This isn't that birth. And you're not alone this time." "I know." "Do you? Because what you're carrying, Joe, that fear, that grief, you don't have to carry it by yourself anymore. That's what partnership means. We share the burden." He kissed her palms, then her lips. "How did I get so lucky?" "You answered an advertisement from a desperate widow with 9 children. Clara smiled. "Some people would call that unlucky." "Some people are fools." The baby came in early March as winter began to loosen its grip. Clara's labor was long but straightforward. Martha served as midwife, experienced from dozens of frontier births, while Joe paced outside the bedroom door, unable to stay away, but unable to watch. When the baby's cry finally rang out strong and healthy, Joe burst through the door before Martha could stop him. "Clara." "I'm fine." She was exhausted, sweat-soaked, but smiling. "We're fine." Martha placed the baby in Clara's arms. A girl, a beautiful, healthy girl. Joe sank to his knees beside the bed, tears streaming down his face, unashamed. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Clara, she's perfect." "She is." Clara touched the baby's tiny face. "What should we name her?" Joe was quiet for a moment. "What about Sarah? After your first wife?" Clara nodded slowly. "I'd like that. Sarah Mercer." "Sarah Ruth Mercer." Joe looked at her. "Ruth, because your daughter helped save us all that first winter. Because she's part of this family too." Clara's throat tightened. "Sarah Ruth! It's perfect!" The children came in one by one to meet their new sister. Ruth wept with joy when she heard the name. Samuel held the baby with surprising tenderness. Even Jacob, tough, stubborn Jacob, touched Sarah's tiny fingers with something like wonder. "She's so small," Hannah whispered. "You were that small once," Clara told her. "Was I smaller even?" Clara smiled at her children, all 10 of them, now gathered around her bed. "You've all grown so much. I'm so proud of every one of you." "We're proud of you too, Mama," Ruth said softly. "For everything you did, everything you sacrificed." "I didn't sacrifice anything. I gained everything." Clara looked at Joe, at her children, at the new baby in her arms. "This is what I was fighting for. This is what it was all about." Spring came, and with it renewal. Clara recovered quickly, her strength returning with the warming weather. Sarah grew and thrived, adored by 9 older siblings who competed for the privilege of holding her. The ranch prospered. The cattle multiplied. The fields produced more than ever before. And Clara finally wrote the letter she'd been putting off for months. She wrote to her mother's grave in Ohio, telling her everything that had happened. The journey west. The man who had promised kindness. The family they'd built. The victory over Maddox. The new baby. She would never send the letter, of course. But writing it felt like closure. Like saying goodbye to the old life and fully embracing the new. On a warm evening in late May, Clara sat on the porch with Sarah in her arms, watching her children play in the yard. Joe came to sit beside her, dusty from a day's work, smelling of horses and hay. "Beautiful evening," he said. "Beautiful life." He smiled and put his arm around her. "No regrets. Not a single one. Even the hard parts, the fear, the uncertainty, Maddox. Especially the hard parts." Clara leaned against him. "They brought me here. They brought me to you. How could I regret that?" Samuel was teaching William to rope. Ruth was helping Martha in the garden. Jacob was brushing down horses in the corral, talking to them softly, his earlier anger a distant memory. Eliza sat under a tree, writing in her journal. Mary and Daniel chased each other through the grass. Hannah held Benjamin's hand, helping him toddle around the yard. 10 children. 1 husband. 1 home. Clara had started with nothing but desperation and 9 hungry mouths to feed. Now she had everything. "I never thanked you properly," she said to Joe. "For what?" "For answering my advertisement. For sending passage money. For meeting us at that train station in the middle of a blizzard." Clara looked up at him. "For being kind when you had every right to be cruel. I told you then, and I'll tell you now, kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is." Joe kissed her forehead. "You taught me that, Clara. You and your children. Before you came, I was just surviving. Now I'm living." "So am I," Clara smiled. "So are we all." Sarah stirred in her arms, making soft sounds. Clara looked down at her newest child, this perfect blend of herself and Joe, this symbol of everything they'd built together. "She has your eyes," Clara said. "She has your strength. She has all of us." Clara touched Sarah's cheek. "She's going to grow up surrounded by love. She'll never know what it's like to be alone, to be afraid, to wonder if anyone cares about her." "None of them will." Joe's voice was fierce with promise. "Not as long as I'm breathing." The sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The children's laughter echoed across the valley. The smell of Martha's cooking drifted from the house, and Clara Mercer, who had once been Clara Whitfield, who had once been a desperate widow selling herself to a stranger, sat on her porch with her husband and her baby, and knew finally completely that she was home. Not because of the house or the land or the ranch. Because of love. Because a scarred man with gentle hands had promised her kindness and kept that promise every single day. Because 9 children had trusted her enough to follow her into the unknown and had found their place in a family bigger than blood. Because she had faced her fears, fought her battles, and won. The road had been hard. The journey had been long. There had been moments when Clara thought she couldn't go on, couldn't take another step, couldn't bear another burden. But she had. And now on the other side of all that pain and fear, she had found something she'd never dared to dream of. A life worth living. A love worth fighting for. A family that would last forever. Clara closed her eyes and let the evening peace wash over her. She had expected a monster. She had found a miracle. And that she knew now was what happened when you chose courage over fear, hope over despair, love over everything else. That was what happened when you finally let yourself believe that kindness could be real. That was what happened when you came home.